That is the key question that I think is very much avoided by the powers that be. So if we start with that, differentiating between public money and private money, and ensuring that the public money supply is based on the common interest and not on the bankers' interest, that's when you realize that America has a big problem because the Federal Reserve Bank is privately controlled. And Argentina has a problem because although Argentina, which is probably the more common model, although our central bank is formally a government organism, because there's a sort of dogma that says that central banking has to be independent, so it is independent of government policy. And you realize how through a rather labyrinthical method, the private bankers end up controlling the central bank through a more complex system. And the key question that I asked down here is, if Argentina's central bank is independent of government, but as a taxpayer, I pay for their salaries, well, then I want to know who the central bank responds to. And that's when you realize that whether it be in Argentina, in Brazil, in Europe, even in America in a different way, certainly in Canada, they end up responding to the private bankers who wield huge power to control the central bank and control the ideas that public opinion has regarding what a central bank should be and should not be.
Well, you raise the very important question, indebted to whom? And I think it's a question that a lot of people are thinking more and more about, as we hear, of course, in the United States right now, the debate raging over the national debt. How do you answer that question, and how would you like to change that system?
Well, first of all, I think that the basic policy, what is the basic need of any economy? To have the necessary funding in order for things to be done. For example, here in Argentina, we have a country that is potentially hugely wealthy. We are 5 times the size territorially of France. Argentina, just to give you an idea, and to give your, your viewers an idea, is so large that we are as long from north to south as America is from east to west. We have a small population, only 44 million people. The more richer parts of our territory are practically uninhabited. They have very small population. So we need to build roads, we need to build ports, we need to build airports, we need to build just about everything. However, the government or the state, which should do the strategic planning to integrate the country. A country like Argentina needs roads, needs railways, needs just all the basic infrastructure. And yet even the nation state will say, I cannot do that by issuing the necessary money because that's inflationary. It's part of the false dogmas that we've been imposed. So even the nation state, even the Argentine government will go and seek money from the private bankers. The IMF will almost impose it upon them. So what do? The money comes in, it comes in dollars, it comes in with huge interest payments, and we have Argentina, which is practically collapsed under the weight of a basically fraudulent public debt. And you figure, well, what would be the alternative? A state can issue the necessary currency to create all infrastructure, for example, that will enlarge or make the economy grow. So if you build a highway from, say, Buenos Aires to one of our larger cities in the interior of the country, and as that highway is built, you finance it, instead of with private money banker credits, you finance it with actual monetary issuance, with public money. As the money goes and pays for the cement, the steel, the workers, the consultants, the architects, and so forth, part of that money automatically flows back to the government through taxes, through increased economic activity, because as you build the road, you will have gas stations and restaurants and even new towns springing up. So the government's obligation with public money is to provide the amount of money that the real economy needs to grow, but to grow in the public interest. As that money has been issued, the government can recover it through taxes and, if need be, burn it. Or if the road did not enable them to recover the full amount of money, they can charge a toll road, and then as the money comes in, they can also burn it. That's in an extreme case. What an intelligent government would do is, as it finances with public funding, and with sovereign currency intelligently used, as it finances these infrastructure projects and the economy grows, it can recycle those very same monetary issuances to build other projects, whether it be a port, an airport, and so forth. You would figure, okay, that's inflationary. And I would say no. What's inflationary, and we know a lot about it in Argentina because in 1989, our previous crisis, we had hyperinflation. We had 10,000% inflation in 1 year. And it was created because the government issued all the money it needed just to pay for government workers, for police, for teachers, and so forth. And government workers and the police and teachers, although we need them, they do not enlarge the economy. Teachers merely create future minds for future kids who will be someday economically useful. But at the moment, a teacher's salary does not grow the economy. So that part of government spending has to be covered by taxation. That's what taxes are all about. But if the state says, no, I'm building a road where there was nothing, now there's going to be a road, and there's going to be new towns, there's going to be a whole lot of economic activity, that monetary issuance merely satisfies the greater need of a growing economy. And that's the secret that's been hidden. And I think that you probably have seen it, and many have seen it, The Secret of Oz by Bill Still. It's a video. The point that he makes is that the secret lies in the quantity of money. So the state's public obligation is to control the quantity of money. There have been experiments, Jim, throughout history, which were very clumsy because it involved stamping bills and doing a lot of things which was just almost above the municipal level in Europe. It was almost impossible to do in the 1920s and the 1930s. But nowadays, with computer technology, the state can fully control the exact amount of money that the economy needs and issue it or withdraw it from circulation.
That's exactly right. Okay, well, so let's move on. I mean, the finance is such a key issue here, but there are other parts to this project, and it goes a lot beyond just the monetary concern of the people. So I mean, once we get that, if we're able to institute a new monetary system, that's still not the end of the struggle, because the forces arrayed against us are acting in so many different ways. What are some of the other ways in which this Second Republic project will hopefully overturn the New World Order?
Yeah, well, that brings, I'm going to jump very quickly to what we described as the fifth pillar. And I'll tell you why. Because the fifth pillar means restoring our values. And what I mean by that, I don't want to be, rather goody-goody about it, but rather be very pragmatic and very commonsensical. Nowadays, we have, the world has all its priorities turned upside down. For example, finance will completely control the economic system. The economy will control the political system, whereby you have politicians, that it happens in America, it happens in Argentina, who are paid by major corporations and so forth. And this political system destroys our cultural values, and that in turn has created probably the moral fall of most of the world. However, what we propose is putting things the other way around. The financial system should be totally subordinated to the real economy, because what really counts is people who get up every morning, go to work, and build cars, bake bread, render services, drive cabs, build bridges, build buildings, and so forth. That is the real economy. And finance needs to be subservient to that real economy. Look at it. If you look at the present statistics, the gross domestic product of the entire planet is of around $70 trillion, with America and Europe being the top two economies so far. So you have a $70 trillion gross domestic product, a real economy on a planetary basis of $70 trillion. And yet we know that the hedge funds alone, just to take one small part of finance, is something like 20 times bigger. So you figure, how can the financial system grow 20, 30, 50 times more than the real economy? What we have nowadays is a financial system that has grown through speculation so vastly that it is acting like a cancerous tumor, and it is metastasizing. And today it threatens to kill the economic body of the entire planet. Because, Jim, if you look at it, the economies of the whole world are pretty much intact. You have problems, obviously. Well, in Japan now you have the problem because of the 11th of March earthquake. But the economies are pretty much intact and working, certainly down here in Argentina and throughout Latin America. What is it that has collapsed? It's the financial system. And because it's been given too much power to impose who's going to be the president of the United States, what the media are going to say, what will be taught in universities regarding what money is and what it is not. They just have too much power, and that is probably the key problem of the whole world. So what we need to do is put finance back in its place and make it subservient to the economy. Now, that alone in itself is probably a war. And I don't mean a war in military terms. I mean a war in psychological warfare, economic warfare, in people really making a great effort for that. The economy should be subordinated to a political project. What is the political project? What is the political model that Canada or America or Japan or Argentina needs? The economy has to be subservient to that. And even our laws reflect that, because if I make a lot of money with a sugar factory, the political system will be okay, fine, it's very good. But if I were to say, hey, wait a minute, if instead of manufacturing sugar, I manufacture cocaine, I will land in jail. Why? Because the economic activity of having a sugar factory is good for the common good. The economic activity of selling cocaine is terrible for the for the political system. So we have to be landed in jail. So the economy has to be subservient to the common interest, which is the function of politics. And politics, I believe, has to be subservient to a country's culture. Let me give you an example. The nation state of India has to make it illegal to kill a cow because the Hindu religion says that cows are sacred. The nation state of Argentina says it's just fine to kill a cow because we like to have barbecues. We have very good meat. Who's right? Who's wrong? They're both right. The Indian nation state is respecting Indian culture. Argentina's nation state is respecting Argentinian culture and values, and they're both correct. We have to learn to do those differentiations. And as a final comment, I personally believe that each country's culture has to be subordinated to, or at least have that intuition that there is a superior order, probably an invisible one, call it whatever you want, Buddha, God, Christ, you give it the name you want, which gives significance to all human actions, whether they be private or public or collective, group as a nation. So when you get all these, when you put all these values that have been turned upside down, and you put them right side up, half of any country's problems will become resolved, will solve themselves. That is why I believe, to wrap it up, that the media, and especially schooling, makes such a great effort to confuse us, to give us the wrong information, to give us slices of info, but they put the dots on the table, but then they connect them incorrectly, so we just end up getting an incorrect figure. It's not a question, nowadays people are very informed, but they're not knowledgeable. We have to worry a little bit less about having all the details, which will often clutter us and even swamp us, and try to understand the basic models, both the model of the enemy and what he is imposing upon us, and what would be a good alternative model, which, as I say, in our case, we believe is founding a second republic in just about every country in the world. And then obviously peoples will understand that we have common problems, common interests, common desires, and we should naturally have all countries coming together to work shoulder to shoulder for the common good of humanity.
Well, you raise the prospect of war, whether that be psychological war or economic war or all the other forms of warfare directed against the people who are saying the types of things that you're saying, because we've seen, obviously, over the last decade at least, the global war on terror being constructed as this mythical overarching narrative to try to put revolutionary ideas like this into a certain context whereby we can demonize anyone who dares to threaten the status quo. And so there's no doubt that as this movement begins to gain steam and as changes are really in the pipeline and starting to come about, there will be incredible backlash against this. What do you see, what forms do you see that backlash taking, and how do we counteract that?
Well, let's take one that's in the headlines nowadays. We have the so-called rebels in Libya who are helped by the CIA in the daytime fighting against the Gaddafi forces with bombs, with machine guns, etc. And then at nighttime, they're designing a new central bank. I think that tells us something. And even some commentators from NBC were saying, wow, this is surprising that a so-called revolutionaries who are in the midst of a civil war should sit back in the evening and start designing a new central bank, because the powers that be know that whatever comes out of Libya, they will need to control the Libyan currency, because today, with Muammar Gaddafi, and I'm not defending him, but what he's done, he's definitely on the right track. The central bank of Libya is fully government controlled, and Libya has been able to give interest-free credits that have redistributed wealth quite nicely in Libya. Libya has the highest GDP per capita in Africa. Libya has the highest literacy rate in Africa. There are interest-free loans, and you have them building this massive, I think it's the largest man-made river or seaway, bringing water from the Nubian aquifer to start developing the rest of Libya. In other words, he's really thinking very politically and very strategically, and that probably is one of the reasons why he's being attacked. And they are immorally saying, Mr. Cameron, Mr. Bush, and Mr. Sarkozy, that Gaddafi has to be assassinated. He is a danger because he has, amongst other things, I think he has implemented pillar number 2 of a second republic very well. So no doubt the worst case scenario is that they're going to come in and bomb you out of existence the way they are doing with Libya.